Thanks for coming on pretty short notice, and I apologize for holding you up. I have a number of announcements to make. I'll read a statement and certainly identify all the folks who are here, and then I will again try to answer as many questions as I have that I can answer or that I have up-to-date information about. First, let me recognize our Chief of Staff and Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, Everett Gillison, the Deputy Mayor for Administration Coordination, and the Managing Director, Rich Negrin, the Deputy Mayor for Economic Development, Alan Greenberger, L&I Commissioner Carlton Williams, Deputy Commissioner Mike Fink, and Inspector General Amy Curlin. Every life is precious, and every life is important. We experience senseless acts of violence which take away people's lives. We see train wrecks, car accidents, and plane crashes, and experience lives lost. Acts of nature, tornadoes, hurricanes, and floods, unexplainable to any of us. And then we see what happened 2 days ago. Not an act of nature, but for now, unexplainable. But we know that something went horribly wrong. And I believe in these instances, government must try to find out what happened, why and how did it happen, what human factors, errors, or judgments played a role. Determine responsibility, hold those responsible accountable, fix what needs to be fixed or made better, and then do our best to ensure the safety of all of our citizens and our visitors. Every life is precious and valuable. And as a citizen and as your mayor, I am deeply saddened and hurt by what happened in my city, our city. I want to first apologize to the victims and their families, to the survivors and their families for what happened in our great city on Wednesday. I commit to you that we will make every effort and spare no resource to find out what went wrong in this incident, and we will take every possible action that we can take to fix whatever systems, processes, or procedures that need to be fixed in order to better ensure our collective public safety. And before I continue, I want to thank again our first responders, our firefighters, our police officers, our paramedics, and the first responder Philadelphians, citizens who stepped into harm's way Wednesday morning and with no thought about their personal safety, helped to find those who were injured, some who were buried under that rubble. A few of the names with which I'm familiar: Jordan McLaughlin, Ray Kaufman, Bill Rome, Patrick Glynn, Brian Mullins, and I know that there were many others. And to them, the city owes a great debt of gratitude for their heroic actions as well. Over the last 5+ years, our administration has engaged in a variety of reform efforts across many areas of our city government in an effort to build a stronger, more resilient, and more transparent and healthy and safe city. We can do no less in the area of local government's oversight of private demolition activity. We should all be happy that our city is growing, but we must make sure that it does so in the safest possible manner. In hindsight, we can all wish that matters were handled differently so that death and injury did not occur. But our task now is to answer the question: how can we improve government practices in order to reduce risk? How can we prevent another 22nd and Market Street tragedy? While we lack the resources to have a police officer on every corner or an L&I inspector at every construction site every hour of the day, we can do much better, and we will. And so today, I'm announcing a set of new demolition standards and activity controls that we are going to institute. In some cases, we are able to make changes through regulation. In other areas, we may need to seek new laws, of course, with the support of Philadelphia City Council. Through these changes, we will hold local private developers, property owners, and demolition contractors to the same high standards to which we, as a city government, hold ourselves in any demolitions involving public property or public projects. These proposals are sweeping in nature, but they are not the end of our reform efforts, but rather just the beginning, because we will not accept the status quo in the face of this tragedy. But before I go into details, I do want to note that the Department of License and Inspections is currently inspecting every single site where an open demolition permit is in place. By next week, we will have completed this task, which is aimed at ensuring Philadelphians that we will have no violations of law at any of these locations. In addition, today I'm announcing that I've asked Inspector General Amy Curlin to conduct a complete and thorough investigation of what happened and what didn't happen at 22nd and Market Streets in the days, weeks, and months before Wednesday's building collapse. On the basis of her investigation and recommendations, we will then consider further actions that may need to be taken. And so now let me describe our new demolition standards and activity controls. Our goal here is to increase public safety at these private demolition sites, to bring them up to the same high standards that we maintain on public demolition sites. For example, when we talk about making private contractors meet our high public standards, we are going to make sure that they have the appropriate experience to do the job safely. And just as we require in the cases of demolition undertaken by the city, we will prohibit the use of mechanical demolition machinery when the demolition building or the building to be demolished is adjacent to an occupied structure. We will now issue a code bulletin that is essentially a legal notification that we are changing the interpretation of the city code to make these changes now. Now let me talk about two critical areas. One, permit applications, and the procedures that must be followed for demolition inspections starting now. All new permit applications for complete demolition must include the following documents and requirements prior to issuance of the permit. 1, details on the experience and qualifications of the contractor performing the demolition, including the demolition experience of the owner, the company, and its employees. 2, a site safety plan detailing how the contractor proposes to protect pedestrians and adjacent properties. 3, a schedule of the demolition work. The contractor will also show the length of time for each stage of the demolition project. 4, a professional engineer's report on adjacent property protection for the demolition of commercial buildings above 3 stories. 5, we also want to make sure that there are no active violations for contractors and will review all previous violations if there are any. Now, let me turn to the procedures that we will be implementing for demolition inspections. 1, at the time of an initial inspection, we will require the inspector to conduct a site safety review with the contractor prior to the start of work. The goal here is to review steps for protecting adjacent properties and pedestrians. And the inspector will review the schedule of work with the contractor during each inspection to ensure compliance. Second, often it is asked, what happens if we have no contact from the contractor? If the required notification of the start of work is not received from the contractor, the inspector will visit the site every 15 business days from the permit's date of issuance. After 45 days, if there is no evidence of legitimate work started at the permitted demolition site, then the permit will be revoked. Third, what happens if the contractor starts work and does not tell us? If we find the contractor working without the required notification, the inspector will issue a stop work order until a hearing is held regarding the contractor's failure to notify and the site safety review is completed with the inspector and the contractor. 4, on the issue of complaints regarding demolition activity, L&I will now investigate all complaints within a 24 to 48-hour period and provide a detailed report to include, but certainly not limited to, the nature of the complaint, an explanation of the findings, determination of compliance, and a time and date-stamped photo of the site for all site visits and inspections. Fifth, L&I will immediately implement a quality assurance plan setting forth the policies and practices that ensure that all site inspections and complaints are performed in a timely and accurate manner. And 6, L&I will coordinate with the Department of Revenue to make sure that all demolition contractors and/or subcontractors provide proof of the following: proper insurance, tax clearances, and payroll records for all employees before any building permit is approved. The new procedures I've outlined also establishes regular management-level analysis of internal audit findings to assess L&I's overall level of conformance, with the ultimate goal of identifying and correcting areas of nonconformance and inefficiency, and engaging staff in improving processes and procedures. L&I will also be establishing a construction site task force to ensure proper licensing, permitting, and tax compliance of the primary contractor, subcontractor, or any independent contractors or workers on the demolition site. Funding for this particular initiative has already been allocated in the FY14 budget beginning July 1, 2013. This team will work non-standard hours to do the kind of oversight we want and need. The Construction Site Task Force will also coordinate with other city agencies, including the Department of Revenue, the Law Department, and the Office of the Inspector General, to audit and strictly enforce all provisions related to work site safety and tax compliance as set out in the City Code and the Board of Labor Standards, to ensure that area wage rates and standards are also being upheld. If we find any evidence of violation, it will lead to an immediate suspension of the permit, and the project will be discontinued until the contractor and related parties fully comply. Finally, we have a number of recommendations that we are evaluating that also may require City Council legislative action. 1, if a contractor fails a call for inspection, we are proposing to implement a stop work order with a $1,000 inspection fee required that must be paid before work may continue. 2, we're also considering a separate license category for demolition contractors. We would only allow the issuance of demolition permits to those with this license. We also want to establish testing and experience requirements as well. 3, we're also considering a code requirement for background checks and for contractors to provide random drug screening for heavy equipment operators on demolition sites as part of the site safety inspection. And 4, we plan to send letters to all current licensed contractors in the city that they will be required to provide proof of experience and qualifications in order to get a demolition permit. Let me say again, the city experienced a great tragedy. All of us in public service and our citizens have been deeply affected by what happened 2 days ago. But as I said earlier, it is our responsibility, and I know all good public servants feel this way, that whatever we can do, even at this moment, going forward, to try to prevent any future tragedies, that is the role of government. I'm very proud of the folks standing behind me and many others in the room who've worked very diligently on these new policies and procedures and standards. They're good public servants. They care about the city. They care about our citizens. And we are all very saddened and hurt. And as a city government, we apologize to all of our citizens for what has happened in these past 2 days. And with that, I'll be glad to try to answer